Is that gratuitous violence?
There it is.
It is 8:15 and I will call this meeting to order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes? Agenda, any questions? Okay, entertain a motion.
So regarding the agenda, it says executive session is needed. I would like to keep it to discuss the labor negotiation issue.
Great.
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second, with the amendment to add the.
Yes.
It's, yes, I mean, it said as needed, so I'm just saying this need.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, moving on to the consent agenda with approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 24th. Approval of claims of October 8th, 2024. Any questions? I wasn't here, but I did watch.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to public comment. This is not the public hearing, so if there's any public comment that doesn't have to do with the public hearing, we will take a minute. No. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Brian.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Good morning, Brian Heinrich with Puget Sound Energy, and I just wanted to thank you for I'm speaking on the new action item in support of changing Whatcom County Code 2082 to allow increased transmission capability. The Whatcom County Council will be taking that issue up starting this afternoon. We expect there to be a little bit of a process, but really appreciative, assuming you're hoping to support it. So thank you in advance for that. And I'm happy to answer any questions should you have any. And again, just thank you for your support for that measure. Thank you.
Robert?
Yeah, I didn't notice this. What is the practical effect of this? What is the-
You want me to address that?
I
Go
can-
ahead, Chris.
Yeah, so if you look at any heavy industry that's going to be developed in Whatcom County, independent of any other changes, like if something like a smelter were to come back in, we'd need to have very likely 230,000 volt or higher source to feed it. So you've got that specific need that would drive it. The second thing is that as we electrify our built environment and our transportation, we're going to need to transmit about 2 to 3 times the energy through our system that we do today. And so many of the lower voltage lines, 115 kV and lower, are going to have to be upgraded to accommodate the power flow in the same right of way. So the way that the county's ordinances are today, it blocks anything above 115,000 volts, and that's a very low transmission voltage.
Will that will require new infrastructure? Can you put more power to the same?
So it really depends on how it was originally built, how old it is, and where it's going. So for instance, there are many 115 circuits out there today, I know, just driving around, not necessarily in Whatcom County, that are insulated for 230,000. So the upgrade to the higher voltage would largely entail work at both ends. But many of the 115 lines need to be rebuilt. They would be able to be built in the same right of way, but you might need a different taller structure, for instance, because you're going to have larger insulators on it. You may want to have larger conductor, and you want to raise it up so you have higher ground clearance for the higher voltage.
Okay, you mind to ask one more question?
No.
You got my interest when you said as we electrify. So is it, I mean, I don't know, maybe you want to answer it well. Is this portend a major restructuring of the grid, or is it just a case by case?
I would echo everything Chris just said. I don't believe that it would require significant structure. We have existing right of way, we have existing infrastructure. It's just removing that cap at 115 up to 230.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you might have to have bigger structures built in the existing right of way. And you may need to change out equipment in substations. But at the end of the day, the layperson looking at it wouldn't see the difference.
I have a question. Brian, does Puget Sound Energy use dynamic line ratings?
That's a good question. I'll have to get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public comments not regarding 211?
You have something up on the screen.
Yeah, so is the public hearing on 2117? Yes, it is, and we will get to that just as soon as the regular public comment is over. Which it looks like it is. So now we will begin the continuation of the public hearing regarding Washington State Ballot Initiative number 2117 concerning carbon tax credit trading. And we will public hearing. It looks like we do have one hand raised online. Jamie and Andy Douglas. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for taking this important resolution up. My name is Jamie Douglas. I am the Vice Chair of the 42nd Legislative District Democrats, which has endorsed a no vote on I-2117. I'm also speaking to you today as a concerned citizen and a voter of Whatcom County. The Washington State Cap and Trade Program, which 2117 would eliminate, is a necessary step indicated by economists to address the existential threat of climate change. This program will provide funding for projects such as geothermal energy production being considered by the PUD. 2117 requires a stance by the PUD. This is definitely in your guys' lane. If you don't step up to say something about it, it would be really a dereliction of your duties. Existential global threat is a very lofty term. So let me speak plainly. We and all of humanity will be dead if you don't listen to the science and the advice of economists. The carbon of our bodies will be sequestered in the ground, making oil just like the dinosaurs that came before us. For the sake of humanity, please pass this resolution and advocate for a no vote on I-2117. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to respond to?
Not respond.
We're doing it
Yeah.
back and forth.
Or any other support.
Yeah, go ahead and come up to the mic.
Okay, it's not a response, I just have a 3 minute stand.
Oh, yeah. Yes, please. State,
Trying, okay.
please state your name. Yeah, come on in.
Is it working? Yeah. Okay. My name is Matthew Goggins. I live in Bellingham. I've volunteered on the initiative's signature gathering, canvassing in support. It's not against it. I testified 2 weeks ago, and I'd like to follow up on my testimony. Can I hand you a little illustration of a point here? This is a very interesting map. It's a summary of the situation in the United States from the Center of American Progress, which you may have heard of. They're a liberal think tank in Washington. And
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll enter this one in the record.
Sure.
Here's a spare one for you.
Thanks. And it illustrates small business growth from 2019 to 2023. And you can see the decrease in small business startups. There's no change, and then the green shades increases. And we're celebrating the fact that since 2019 to 2024, 5% of the United States have experienced small business growth. And you can see this.
Sorry to interrupt, but if you could hold the microphone a little bit away from your mouse. It's, we're not picking it up online.
How's that?
Just use mine.
And states just extension. So so I can't really engage in full conversation about climate change and can't mention really how it works. How it becomes the cost to the customers, but it's not really getting and so much stuff and cross the state actually. And part of that is make sure you it's for transportation. It could go up significantly. In your wheelhouse, despite what the side. Should have too. A regressive tax on poor people across the state is not the best way to fund.
Robin Dexter. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. And my attitude is that you should absolutely oppose this initiative. And the reason is, as I've always said during budget time, your duty is to think a little longer term than someone's worried about their next tank of gas. And that's the best reason I can think of to support this resolution.
Next, we'll take Phil Thompson online. Please unmute yourself, Phil. Phil, you're still muted.
Commissioner, I suggest we move on to the next one.
Great. We'll come back to you, Phil, if we can figure out how to get you unmuted. Christy Carey. Hi, Christy.
Hello, now, so I didn't have the controls to mute or unmute, just so you know. Until you spoke to me, then you gave me those controls. So maybe that person is having that same issue. I don't know.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to say that no on 217 to me is 2117, I mean, is front loading the system because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And we are watching Florida going to be decimated, and they will not recover financially from this. There is no way, and FEMA won't either. So while people have complained about gas prices being high here in Washington, I feel no problem at all. And I'm not a rich person, but I feel no problem at all paying higher gas tax costs to prevent, to do everything in our power to prevent catastrophic, losses to not only Washingtonians, but all over the country, actually more all over the country. So it only makes sense to me that we would try to do everything in our power to address this issue ahead of time and get ourselves prepared for what is coming. And yes, Jamie Douglas was right. It is an existential threat. This isn't a joke. This is serious. And we watched the Climate Restorers video a couple of nights ago. These are the highest, most educated people in the world who are discussing climate issues. And they do have mitigating strategies. And we live on one of the coastlines that can actually utilize some of these strategies they're going to use. It's a brilliant documentary. I strongly recommend it. It's at the Pickford right now, or will be next Monday. But the Climate Restorers are trying to mitigate this stuff, but we cannot not fund the things that need to be done in our state to front load the system. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Phil, are you available? Still muted. Can we try and unmute Phil?
There we go.
Great.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks. Sorry about the technical problem. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to address today's meeting of the PUD1 Board of Commissioners. My name is Phil Thompson, and I'm a retired Western Washington University professor of energy, environmental, and regulatory economics. I'm also a member of Whatcom County's Climate Impact Advisory Committee, although I'm appearing today as a private citizen and expressing only my own opinions. I urge you to pass PUD1 Resolution 859, opposing the passage of statewide ballot initiative 2117. I-2117 would repeal the Washington Climate Commitment Act, or CCA. The CCA, which became law in 2021, places a cap on statewide emissions of greenhouse gases, or GHGs, through the auction of allowances, where one allowance is a permit to emit 1 ton of GHGs one time, with the number of allowances available declining over time to achieve the emission reduction goals set under RCW 70A.45.020. This effectively charges emitters a fee for each ton of pollution they create. Prior to passage of the CCA, emitters could dispose of unlimited amounts of GHGs free of charge. This approach to GHG emission control is favored by economists and many policymakers because it leads to reductions in emissions at the lowest possible total compliance cost and encourages innovation in pollution control technologies. CCA allowance auctions have thus far generated approximately $2.8 billion in revenue that funds thousands of projects supporting climate mitigation and adaptation across Washington, while also, and this is important, promoting environmental justice goals. In Whatcom County, the CCA has already delivered significant revenue. $92 million across 87 projects has already been appropriated. Some examples include $6.7 million to the Whatcom Transportation Authority to adopt a zero fare policy for riders under 18, $2.7 million in climate planning grant funding to Whatcom County jurisdictions to support integration of House Bill 1181 into the comprehensive plan, and $1.3 million in home electrification and appliance rebate funding. Repeal of the Climate Commitment Act will deny future revenue to these initiatives. Repeal would also remove a significant source of state funds for major climate-friendly capital projects, including, for example, the current county funding gap of $47 million for the Lummi Island Ferry Replacement and System Modernization Project. More generally, repeal of the CCA would also hobble funding to implement other measures in the Whatcom County Climate Action Plan. For all of these reasons, I urge commissioners to adopt your Resolution 859 opposing the passage of I-2117. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Steve Harrell.
Mike McCumber has this.
Oh, Mike.
I just wanted to give a brief description of how this works. So what I have to do is I have to allow someone to talk and then they have to unmute themselves. We do not have the ability to unmute them, but they have to wait until I allow them to talk. Then they will see the unmute button available.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, Steve is next.
Yes, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make this simple. And just talk about how the Climate Commitment Act is a genius because it works both directions. It not only incentivizes people who emit greenhouse gases, which are warming our Earth, not only incentivizes them to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions because it places a cost on emitting them, but it also creates a fund that works both to mitigate climate change in a sense of things like electrification of transportation, encouraging people, for example, WTA has given free fares now to under 18, which is also comes from Climate Commitment Act funds, but also for adaptation to the climate change that is happening anyway, such as flood control projects. And we all know, for example, that although it may pale in comparison to what happened with hurricanes in the Southeast, our floods of December 2021 were disastrous. So the Climate Commitment Act works both ways. It both incentivizes less pollution, and it allows us to spend the money raised to mitigate further pollution and to adapt to the pollution that's already happened. So this is a kind of a genius arrangement, and we need to keep it. So therefore, I would urge the board to adopt a resolution 859 to oppose initiative 2117. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. There are currently no other hands raised. If you'd like to speak during the public hearing, please raise your hand. Is Ashley?
Good morning. Thank you all. So I'd like to urge the PUD Council to support the People's Initiative and not to oppose it. Washingtonians are feeling the squeeze of rising costs. If you come and speak to individuals at the gas pump, you'll hear that they can't afford what Inslee said was going to be pennies. It's ever increasing on every level in this state. We're being taxed to death, and they just can't afford it. And so they're asking for relief, and they've signed this initiative. Ignoring 1.2 million people in this state would be wrong. So we say we care about people and we pass stuff all the time to prevent homelessness. But what if we started from the front end here and just stopped taxing so much with aggressive taxing? I urge you to take no action or to support, to listen to the people, to honor their right as the fourth branch of government. The Climate Commitment Act has not lived up to its promises and instead contributed to higher costs for hardworking families. Students at Western are in support of 2117 because they can't afford it. They want to go to school, they want to live here in Whatcom County and Washington State, and they're asking for relief at the gas pump. So I ask you and I urge you to take the step in listening to 1.2 million people in Washington State, and don't just oppose this because you can. Take the right step and listen to the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Is there anyone else online that would like to speak during the public hearing? Please raise your hand. Is there anyone else? Oh. Well, this says Joseph Shea.
It's probably.
I think it's Donna.
Yes.
Hi, Donna. Go
Hi.
ahead.
I would like to speak for, just to point out the fact that signatures that were collected for this were paid for by a person that is very wealthy, and that the idea is for him to pay less taxes. This has nothing to do with our substantial environment, that by cutting the funding, we would be stop geothermal investigation in our county. We would be stopping WTA funding. We would be stopping a lot of things that we have now incorporated into what is really important to not only educate, but to keep our county as beautiful as it is. We've seen what happens ultimately because of pollution, and this has to be very protected, and we need to make sure that we vote yes on this.
Thank you, Donna. Anyone else that would like to contribute to the public hearing, please raise your hand. Is there anyone in the audience? Okay, well, not seeing any further hands raised.
I think we close the public hearing.
We'll
and
close
then-
the public hearing and begin discussion.
So just a point of clarification, the person who recently started off as Joseph Shea was using probably Joseph's link. And her name is Donna Starr. To make sure we get that correctly, STARR, I believe. So just that clarification.
Does anyone have any discussion regarding this resolution before us today?
I would.
Go ahead.
I just didn't want to have to go first. Oh, but I'll go first.
I'll go first.
You go first.
While the Climate Commitment Act isn't perfect, I think that there's a lot of value in it. And as we all know, when you're making the sausage, there's a lot of bits and pieces that go in that you may not like, but the end product coming out is what matters. And so I'm going to support this resolution opposing 2117. Do I wish that the Climate Commitment Act did some things differently? Yes. I wish it incentivized the public to electrify a little bit better. And what I mean by that is that currently we charge people who have electric vehicles a additional fee of, I think, about $225 in their registration. I think that we should be using these funds to incentivize electrification a little bit better. And I understand we have a lowering gas tax revenue in that, but if we truly want to see a green energy future, clean energy future, we need to be working where the rubber meets the road, literally with the most common people on that. And then another thing that I wish it did differently is something I noticed when walking downtown and chatting with a elected leader who was running for office downtown Bellingham, was that the grants that the city of Bellingham got to put in EV charging, they were putting in public infrastructure, and then they were transferring the administration of that to a private party that was then charging about twice 25 cents per kilowatt hour when the average electrical charge from our electricity provider PSE is about 11 to 12 cents per kilowatt hour. So I just find it difficult to accept utilizing public money to create public infrastructure that then has a private entity making profit off of that. I wish the Climate Commitment Act did that a little bit differently. However, what the Climate Commitment Act does do is provide some funding for us to transition and do geothermal studies and see if that is going to be a feasible energy supply. And there's a lot of other good things that come out of the Climate Commitment Act. The Whatcom County Ferry Advisory Committee that I sit on is going to, we're definitely benefiting from that, even though we do have to take a hard look at the funding and the finances that are going to be for a new ferry there. It was an interesting email that I saw this morning from you, Chris, about the electrification of the ferry and what that looks like. So I'm going to support this resolution. It's not perfect. The Climate Commitment Act is not perfect, but I think going forward, the opportunity to fix it is what we need to do and not just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
So, yeah, I don't know a piece of legislation that's perfect. I don't know a policy that's perfect. Maybe there are, but mostly they have one issue or another. And by the way, there's a lot of us on this planet. And so by definition, we would all have different perspectives on that. And the whole art of concocting legislation that passes and has a wide constituency of support is that there are going to be significant numbers of people who have an issue with anything that passes, and that has particularly one component of that. So I came to this conversation, full disclosure, although I haven't spoken publicly on this subject, definitely favoring opposition of this initiative. I was very glad to get statements from the community and certainly for it, for opposing to the initiative. I'd like to talk briefly about my thoughts about the statements for, just in any order. First, regarding young people and students at Western Washington and other universities, I would say that it's fair to say that the Climate Commitment Act received, based on my answering, strong support from the students and young people. There's overwhelming support for climate-related action. So it's certainly possible there might be individual student groups who would be in support of 2117, but it would be my assertion, based on working with student groups, that the overwhelming support is would be a no vote. Regarding the regressiveness of the tax, Washington really has got some work to do about the regressiveness of our taxation. We're pretty exceptional in how bad we are in this regard. We're one of the most regressive states in the country, and I wish that wasn't the case. But in the creation of the Climate Commitment Act, that was heavily considered. How do we make it at least neutral? And if you look at the actual actions associated with the Climate Commitment Act, which I'll get into in just a minute, it's overwhelmingly clear to me that we're seeing investments in urban disadvantaged communities, rural disadvantaged communities that are very substantial, that are directly impacting those people's lives in a beneficial way. So we have a lot of work to do with regard to regressive taxation. And I'm glad to say the Climate Commitment Act is an example of a piece of legislation that actually appropriately addresses that problem. By the way, in my comments, I'm not asking anybody to just blindly go on my vote and my opinion and vote one way or the other on their ballot. I never have done such a thing, and I never will do such a thing. But I expect the public to rely on a reasoned argument, and that's what I'm trying to make here. Now, I'd like to take a minute to thank you, Commissioner Arnett, for suggesting that I go last week on the tour hosted by the Whatcom Conservation District. And why am I bringing that up? One of the things that was overwhelmingly true on that tour is that 80% of their projects that are happening are largely happening because of funding from the Climate Commitment Act. I am shocked by how quickly a brand new piece of legislation is showing up on the ground in the streams in one of the places we visited, or actually all three of the places we visited, were small farmers, small businesses, family-owned and run businesses that were able to do things that allowed them to both protect their farm and protect the environment. And that, to me, is what it's all about. So for those reasons, it is not just climate mitigation that's being addressed in the Climate Commitment. There's something that I care even more and more than mitigation and reducing our carbon footprint, and that's resilience. Because we can't control what the rest of the world is is doing. We should do our part. Absolutely, we should do our part. But I also want us to be more resilient. And what resilience means is that weather's coming. And we don't exactly get to control it. We can pull together though. We can build infrastructure that supports our entire community. And that's what I see the Climate Commitment Act doing. I was not expecting to see these substantial outcomes and results so quickly after a new piece of legislation. I'm hoping that the chart that we were handed, this graphic that the Climate Commitment Act is part of what's going to turn the beige cells, or whatever color you call them, more blue. That's certainly the case for IRA. In the case of IRA, which is at a federal policy, and that's what's happened. And I expect that this is a real challenge, but I believe that climate commitment is actually helping to make that better. Basically, we need to support small business, and I think that the best example of small business are not the only. There's a lot of good examples of small business. I had one. It would have been helped by the Climate Commitment Act, absolutely. But these small farms, community farms, organic farms, mid-sized farms are all benefiting and are going to continue to benefit from this policy. So I'm very strongly in support of this for two reasons. Number one, it's long-term thinking, which is what the PUD should be all about, long-term thinking. And number two, it's resilience. And nothing matters more to me than resilience.
Mic drop. Okay, thank you. I'd also like to thank everybody who weighed in today during the public hearing. Being a single parent, I certainly have been one of those people at the gas station that was counting quarters to make sure I had enough to get my kid to daycare in the morning. So I do sit with concern for that. I also have spoken to a lot of people that were thankful for the 150 million that the CCA gave to low income energy consumers on their utility bill. So there is some funding that's getting directly applied to low income families in Washington state, and I hope that we see more of that direct benefit to low income families. I just want to go back to one of the comments that and it seems that it would be a dereliction of duty for the PUD to not weigh in on this particular initiative. And I actually believe that. I know that some others don't feel the same, but as commissioners, we have a duty to do what's in the best interest of the PUD itself. And when we're looking at a revenue stream that will directly impact our ability to properly serve our customers, to properly serve our county, and like Commissioner Dishmani said, build resiliency locally here right at home. I do think it would be a dereliction of duty to not weigh in at minimum on this initiative. That said, I'm grateful that we'll all get a chance to go to the ballot box and make our choices known. It's difficult to say, what the overwhelming majority of Washingtonians want until those results come back. So I am also in favor of the resolution to oppose ballot initiative number 2117. And I would entertain a motion towards that end.
I'll make that motion as the resolution is in our packet.
Yes.
Is that sufficient?
Yes, we're going to add in one recital reference to today's hearing date, but that's the only other.
I'll second approval of the motion to support resolution number 859.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
You. Okay, moving on to.
That'll be available for signature today.
Sure.
And if anybody, don't feel shy if anybody wants to. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
Forgive me.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, wants to leave, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we will be moving on to resolution resolution number 859, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Public Utility District Number 1 of Whatcom County. We already did that,
Commissioner
opposing the ballot initiative. Wow. Going on to the general manager's report.
At this point, I'd like to defer my report because mostly it's all the stuff that's in all the later action items.
And the new business. An operations report.
I think Kurt's available.
Hello, commissioners. Good morning.
Good morning.
Chris, you threw me off.
Sorry, Kurt.
I'm all thrown off too.
So just we have some things going on over at Plant One. Today we've got a new pump being set for our high heads, and so it won't be running today, but we still have to do, get the motor up, wired up and everything like that. But then after that, we'll have 3 high head pumps at our disposal, which we were running at 1 for a while. So this gives us a little bit of wiggle room now, which is good coming up with the winter season coming up. Also, next week we'll be setting a new intake pump. As you know, we've got the intake facility that's actually on the river, and then the high heads are part of the process. So we'll have 4 pumps over at the intake facility, and so then so that's another little more backup. So those are 2 big things, and then the following week we'll be having our last visit of the divers, and they'll be in the wells, cleaning our screens, and then also replacing some hoses for our Frazzle airburst blow off system. So we're making some good headway on kind of getting some backup abilities for the changing seasons. So these are all small, not very small, but small little things that are helping us get a little better ready for the next turn of events. So that's just my little small report. Do you have any questions?
Yeah. Kurt, our current in-stream flows, are they at about the lowest ebb we're going to see? I mean, we're coming now into the rainy season. So if this is about the low point, can you tell me what the average CFM there is that we're seeing? Just a rough number.
We're at about as the river, what we're pulling out of the river, or what the river is at right now?
What the river's at?
The river's at about 1,000 cubic feet per second currently, based on the Northwest River forecast from the NOAA.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, the normal low is somewhere around 850, 900, and the historic low is just a hair under 500. It's like 485 or 483.
When did that historic low, do we know when that?
I think it was the fall after the heat dome.
Okay.
So
That'd be
late
21. Yeah. Okay.
I think that's right.
According to the NOAA, the last low was in 1995.
Okay. Thank you.
For today's date. Any other questions?
None for me. Thank you so much, Kurt.
Great. Thanks, commissioners.
Thank you.
Moving on to old business with a broadband update.
I'd like to call on Mr. Entrican.
Morning, commissioners.
Morning.
Brief update today. Just wanted to let you know that we've, for the Point Roberts project, we've submitted all of our PSC pole attachment requests. And so we're waiting for PSC to respond. They've responded to a number already, very timely fashion. So thank you to PSC for being so responsive to our pole attachment requests. What we're seeing, according to our engineering firm, is that the make-ready costs are just a little bit higher than we had anticipated. Some even higher than the national average, for example. So what we're doing now is just waiting till we get all of the make-ready costs for all of the pole attachments back before we move forward or determine the next steps. So that's the update on the pole attachments and the permitting. We're also submitting our encroachment permits or the right-of-way permits for the areas that are in county right-of-way. So long story short, we're in the permitting process right now. More to come. And then the second item is the Washington State Association of Counties Technical Assistant a grant that we'll talk about under new business. Back to you, Chris.
I'll just say with regards to BEAD, we're ready to submit applications for all of the project areas once the project areas themselves drop and the NOFO drops. So we're prepared to get that thing underway. I'm hopeful that the timing of the thing does not tear Andrew's holidays apart. It's possible they drop the NOFO the first or second week of December and say that it's due back, the first week of January. I hope that's not going to be the case. I hope they drop the NOFO at this point after the first of the year, and we've got 60 days, and it's just kind of normal. But we'll know when they drop it. They said they were going to drop the project areas over a year ago, and it's been deferred a week or 2 weeks or a month for the last year, and we still don't have the project areas. So, and we know they've been changed substantially just in the last 3-4 months. That's it for BEAD, I think.
Thank you. Question?
At the last commission meeting, there was a proposal presented by staff. And I think you watched the recording. Two commissioners present asked, and since you didn't approve the proposal, Chris, and I'm wondering, you were going to have a meeting yesterday with the PUD staff. And I don't need to do that today at all, but I'm just bringing it up at a subsequent meeting. We should have a more in-depth discussion, I would think, on the approaches that you're pursuing. Have you, and a response to the various conversations that have happened since the last meeting, our last commission meeting?
So at a very high level, the commission has approved us to pursue a dark fiber model, and we will be pursuing that model for all the project areas where we can submit. We're also going to be putting a budget item in to commission a study for next year so that we can re-ask the question and perhaps get a different answer, perhaps not, at the end of next year. The study that we conducted here was pretty definitive, and it indicated the best option for the utility and the community was the dark fiber model and not the lit fiber model. The other option that we were advocating was for those areas where the dark fiber model was likely not going to be competitive, that we simply act as a conduit to get the public funds over to the private IOUs. So at least we would have some say in the timing of the outcome. And that's what we were looking for, was flexibility to do that. Failing that, we'll simply go and execute the strategy and kind of cross our fingers and hope for the best. I think there's at least one area where we are absolutely going to be the most competitive offer. In fact, we may be the only offer. And I think we have a reasonable expectation of success there. The other 4 areas, there's a couple where we believe that the incumbent investor-owned or privately held ILECs and ISPs, for instance, Ziply and Comcast, those folks, they are going to be very, very competitive, and it's going to be very difficult for us to even get half their score. So it's, we'll submit, but not with high expectations of success.
Good luck, everybody.
I just want to say thank you for being flexible and understanding the commission's desire to really pursue a publicly owned model. I appreciate that, Chris.
And basically our conversation with the PUD yesterday, they did not understand what our fundamental strategy was and where it came from. So once we educated them on that, and they educated us on where WSBO, the Washington State Broadband Office, where they stood on the NOFO, and it turned out they weren't educating us, because Andrew's been in every meeting that they've also been in, and he was able to educate them on some of the background. So they were very much reassured that we knew what the heck was going on, which was good. And they understood our strategy and how it was the same as some areas and different than other PDPs.
Okay, so I'm happy to hear that we're willing to broaden our application space instead of just looking at a single, which is the proposal that we were discussing at the last commission meeting to, and then in addition to play a supporting role to, private sector ISPs. And in that supporting role, be a conduit for state funding, matching funding to flow through us. And then on to the ISPs, and that was very concerning. And so that, we're departing from that and returning back to our original strategy. But as you two know, I'm an ambitious fellow. So let me make an ambitious proposal. And I'm not ready to properly present that. But I would like the other two commissioners to entertain me, not today, but a 15-minute agenda item at the next commission meeting to pitch that Whatcom PUD consider a lit fiber open access model. The reason being is that our original dark fiber strategy, which I wholeheartedly supported, was based on that solicitation. Remember, Whatcom PUD is not relying on tax base to fund this growth. We're not relying on our other customers to fund this growth. We are relying on federal funding that's funneling through state. So when the solicitation fundamentally changes, I think we should be open to changing our approach. And when you look at the scoring criteria, a lit fiber approach, particularly with the latest brand new development that NOAANET is now doing a retail data only ISP, all of a sudden opens up a possibility for us. And that possibility is, now, in the past, when we looked at retail, we would have to do retail. But if no one that's willing to be our retail partner, now all of a sudden we can top the charts on the scoring rubric. I'm making that assertion, and I don't want to debate it today. I'd like to have it as an agenda item. Perhaps we just do it under broadband update, but I'll bring some talking points, and I'd like to have discussion.
Submit a memo ahead of
Yeah.
time. So it's usually helpful.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to give it a shot. Yeah.
I have a question on that. So I'm going to ask Chris the question, but it's kind of directly related to what you're talking about there. Chris, can we submit more than one funding model, i.e. we can submit a plan for dark fiber, we can submit a plan for lit fiber, we could submit a plan for the proposal that you were talking about where the PUD would act as a funding conduit. We could actually submit all three. Is that correct?
It turns out WISBO has ruled that that is not an option. So they want only one submission from each funding seeker. And because what we had originally planned on doing was the dark fiber, and then especially for those areas where we suspected high cost, we were going to do a hybrid option. And they've come back and said no, one for.
So we can't even consider all fiber or fiber and wireless. We're stuck in one lane and one lane only.
Well, I mean, the good news is, yes, we're stuck in one lane, but it's also the highest automatic scoring lane because it's dark fiber, it's fiber to the home.
Sure.
So it's home run fiber. And that gets you the most points in terms of the distribution system for the telecom.
May I jump in here too?
Oh, absolutely.
So a lot of what we've been hearing and reporting on these, commission meetings is based on the most, what we heard that week from the state broadband office, and it's ever changing. So what we know is that we don't know if, without seeing the notice of funding opportunity, part of, everything what Chris is saying is absolutely true, except it's changing even as of this week. And so what we know is that the most recent WISBO called office hours, where you can go and ask your questions. Someone asked just this, hey, we've been told we can only submit one application per project area. And they came back and said, well, no, we want to see an all fiber because that's what we want to see is an all fiber, but you can also submit a wireless.
Seeing that,
so this would be new information to Chris real time.
Ago. Yeah. So every week it changes.
Yes. So that creates really, it makes it really complex because you start thinking, okay, you submit a dark fiber. So think of it, you're going to have like 8 performance. I mean, you're going to have dark fiber, lit fiber, wireless, right? And then, I mean, you can just see this kind of, you can have multiple performers for each individual project area.
Thank you for that. Where I was kind of interested in going is I understand that you have a lot on your plate, Andrew, and you've got a lot of balls in the air you're juggling. Hopefully none of them are knives or chainsaws. And I was just wondering if there's a way when Commissioner Deshmani is communicating probably with NOAANET in regarding this, if we can ask them to pick up some of the load in writing some of the, like if that was going to be a grant model that we went with a lit fiber, since they would be looking at being the ISP, can we have them do some of or more of the work so that we're not putting another piece on Andrew's plate to deal with?
That's, yeah, that's a really good point, and certainly what we should have as part of the discussion, because the whole goal is to deliver more, not with the same resources, not, yeah, so thank you for bringing that up.
So when you look at new business action item number 2, that is in fact what we're talking about there. There's some technical assistance that's being offered that will help take the load off in terms of doing some of the technical background work in each one of the project areas, not specifically for multiple scenarios, but just backbone work.
So that's additional funding. That's not just funding that's going to be used for salary for existing staff then.
Well, let's have that discussion.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you all.
I just want to express frustration. I'm sure you feel this, Andrew and Chris, you feel this, that I feel like even a year ago, we had an idea of where we were going with broadband, you know, what kind we wanted to deploy, how we were going to do this. And I feel like we're becoming contortionists, you know, trying to fit how we deploy broadband into how the funding mechanism is working. And I just want to make sure that when we make decisions, that we're doing it not just because that's the easiest income stream sometimes, but also that it's what benefits Whatcom County the most. I mean, I have questions about NOAANET, like what is the benefit to NOAANET? To me, it feels like they're drumming up business, but through their offerings, but I don't know. So I'm looking forward to a memo from you. And, you know, is it going to be less expensive for us to deploy that fiber? Is it going to be less expensive to the customer if we, you know, have lit fiber? I would like to see all of that information, because I feel like I said, I had an idea of where we were going, and now we're back into chaos.
So let me just make an observation that part of this is a matter of my personal style. As we get new information on these things, and that's why I have it as a standing, and you know, no objection on my part, is that actually what I wanted, have it as a standing item, is to keep you guys informed as things change. Had no understanding that it would change this radically, this late in the game, and just over and over and over and over. So you guys are watching us make sausage. And so in a sense, I would ask you to just stand back. You know, we've got policy direction from you guys. Know that we're going through turmoil. We're going to share it with you. And we're not asking for your opinion and action on every bit of this, because until the notice of funding opportunity drops, we don't know what we're going to be able to do. We've got a bunch of different opinions from the Washington State Broadband Office, but nothing definitive. And in fact, we won't have anything definitive. So, you know, my apologies. I like to share, and that's what I've encouraged Andrew to do. And that's why we have an operations report. And, you know,
we like to give opinions.
And you do, and you do. And I know there are other GMs that would not present any of this to their commission until it was cooked. And that certainly would be easier from my perspective, but I don't think that's fair to you. So I've tried to continue to share this as stuff changes, and just recognize that a lot of these things change week to week. As Andrew just demonstrated, I was out for a week. I wasn't on that one call, and the world changed. And you go back, and about 3 months ago, that WISBO told us, oh yeah, you could submit an all fiber and a hybrid. And then a few weeks after that, in office hours, they said, oh no, only one option. Now they're back to as many as you want. It's just it's always entertaining. And yet we still haven't seen the NOFO, which was supposed to drop nearly a year ago.
I don't think you owe an apology, Chris. I think that what you're doing is actually in the public's best interest as far as providing as much information. And so I certainly appreciate that. And it allows us a better opportunity to deliberate. So please, no more apologies on too much information.
Thank you. I don't have anything else on broadband. Do you, Andrew?
No.
That's enough.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to adjudication.
I'll have two topics. One is primarily the court hearing update, and then just Chris and I did the presentation that Todd attended. Court hearing occurred on the adjudication 2 days after the last commission meeting. It was a PUD, I would say. Court only heard from ecology.
Did you say dud or thud?
Thud. Court heard from ecology only at the hearing. The court reviewed the summons and the claim form. They did not approve, the court did not approve those. Asked ecology to address some procedural questions and concerns the court had, primarily around the aspects of the claim form, addressing the smaller exempt well users. And the court indicated it had a cover sheet it wanted to put onto the claim form that no one has seen or heard what that would be. Asked ecology come back in November and note this up for review. We don't have a date on that yet. Ecology indicated that as a result, service is most likely to occur if the summons and forms are approved in November. Likely to have service in January, February with a mass mailing. They didn't indicate why. I am suggesting that it's because ecology doesn't want to say on December 20th, hi, I'm from the government. It's the week before Christmas, it's the middle of holidays, and we're pursuing.
But it depends how you wrap it.
Yeah, it depends how you wrap it. Okay.
It's hard to wrap that positively, though.
The other thing the courts.
Maybe a paperback. Sorry.
The other thing the court indicated is that they would likely have it would take some time to complete service. Ecology thought they would be doing a notice of publication as well as individual service because they may not have effective service in everybody. There's a time frame associated with that. So they expect to have a return date on the summons, which is when you have to respond, which is filing the claim form in this case, of May 2026. So that's when we would file the claim. Which would mean the evidence submission would be, the state statute would be May of 2029. And then ecology would commence looking at the claims, looking at the evidence, and issuing their report of findings for each of the 10,000 plus water right claims that are pending and going through potential hearings. So we're into 2030, 2040 easy in my view. So I have originally anticipating would be in November of 2025 for finalizing the claim forms, and now May 2026 for submission. I've asked our staff that we have a goal of December 2025 to have fully ready for our submission of claim forms. So if there's things that arise, new issues, litigation, things that occur that affect us, we can have a few months to adapt. But so that's our target goal, and we'll keep you updated and obviously have an executive session on what we're submitting before we submit that. Any questions on the board here?
What happened with the Sumas claim?
That was not addressed and not raised. There is a rumor that that will be filed under the court's prior rulings. No one can file a motion unless you get a leave of court. Because the summons has not issued, it's kind of the argument in response by the court, given its prior rulings, would likely be that's premature because there hasn't been a summons. We don't know who's included in the case.
So the boundaries are outside the boundaries of the conversation.
Chicken and egg.
Yes.
I guess the argument would be, since you haven't been summoned, you have no standing.
Yes, that's why it's premature. And that was the court's response to our filing of notice of appearance, which there are court rules and legislation, I think, that are not consistent with that court interpretation, but it wasn't, as we say, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. It isn't worth fighting on that. We're just going to actively monitor. So, but the Sumas issue was not addressed nor raised. And again, they would have to file a motion for leave of court to have it considered at this time. So I expect that that'll happen after Quality issues its summons. Case committee, where the court has indicated they want us to nominate some individuals for chair or co-chair and to review the proposed e-service electronic service rules that the court has proposed. It candidly, I think the court is being a little imprecise and informal. It's, okay, how do we meet? You haven't told us who's going to be our, does John Sitkin just say, well, let's all get together? Or when they've also said they want this very transparent and meet it in public, so I can't just call everybody and say, let's get on a Zoom from my office desk on a certain day. So who is leading this first day of the committee meeting? We don't know. And so I've asked over the past 4 weeks when we were in court, I asked the court's judicial assistant, asked the court clerk, some direction, and so we get letters that really don't give us direction. So at this point, the court clerk asked for our days of conflict when we're available, we sent those in. And I, with people from the Department of Justice and tribal attorneys and attorneys from all over the state and all over the West, I have no idea how this is going to go. And I've kind of elected to step out of the role of organization because that just seemed like a deep pit for time. And I'll let the court try to organize this at this point. I think the substance of the question they asked on the e-service is of concern, candidly, because rather than asking us to draft something, they're asking us to comment on something they've drafted, which suggests that they're just wanting a committee to be a pass-through to something they've already done rather than really seeking input. And really, by having this committee that has the effect of someone wants to have a substantive objection, they're kind of, which might be good, have it try to resolve at the committee level rather than a court hearing, but it's really, you could be the cynic and say this is really designed to save the court time sitting on the bench rather than managing rules that the parties participate in crafting. So it depends on your cynicism of how the court's approaching this. So we'll wait and see without being a cynic.
Thank you.
The other thing I would say, we did do a presentation, Chris and I did with Bill Clark at PUD Water Week. It was the day after the last commission meeting. Chris did a very nice job of kind of teeing it up for me, and then I came in and told them what I thought they were. I was asked to talk about what the issues might be and of concerns, and Dave Christensen from Ecology was the only ecology representative there. And there was some responses to my comments, but acknowledgement too of the concerns. That for instance, on the small wells, that I thought abbreviated process could be of concern to some, because why is there disparate treatment? Why do you not have to have someone show their actual use when they're small versus a large user? And his comment in the group was, well, because the juice may not work the squeeze, as again his phrase, of the amount of administration that goes through. I said, yes, but the cumulative effect of that water may be significant that you don't have to show. And it's not the rule for having a special procedure didn't mean you threw out the substance of the law when you had to establish for water rights. So I say that only because there are parties that may raise these claims, not that I have a claim.
Thank you.
Measurement, measurement is never been required. And so in statutory law around water, how can you make someone accountable for quantifying something they don't measure?
Well, they will have to go back and figure that out. I mean, I would just give an example. The state called Whatcom County has on its system a presumption of 60 gallons per day per individual in a home. And that is, they call it a simplified approach, and that comes from EPA. And okay, great. That may be the assumption that ecology may set forth. Now, on the other side of how much water, I went and did that on my home, which is for 3 people. It's a 4-bedroom home, 4 baths, driveway, 1 washing machine, 1 dishwasher.
But you have a meter on your house.
Bear with me. So I went through the detailed alternative on the Whatcom County side of water use. And I assumed with 3 people, 4 showers a day, figured in sports or in the yard, I figured 5 flushes a day. I figured, I tried, this is the detail of the detailed approach. No, I said no washing cars. I don't wash my car. I had 400 plus gallons a day. And I did not think my usage was that consumptive or unreasonable. 4 showers a day. Well, run the dishwasher every day, run the washing machine 5 times a week,
But they're asserting 60 per person per
60 per person, so 180 for a great person.
household.
I'm running the detail on the Whatcom County site. At 180, I had over 400 gallons a day. So and the lack of metering is a risk of the user because they have the burden to show how much water they've used. And what Christensen said is, we can't analyze that much metering data if we required everybody to meter. And I said, fair enough, but you can't manage it unless you meter. So that's the dilemma that our college is running administrative. But also what the rules say.
John, when you did your your back in the napkin math there, did you also compare your results to what the city of Bellingham's water meter said you used?
No.
That'd be an interesting comparison.
Difficult with irrigation.
I need to install a meter.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's difficult questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
But I think it was a good presentation. We didn't get a lot of questions from.
I thought it was a good presentation.
Sure.
Nobody said, have you thought of this and made the whole problem simple as you. Nobody said that.
Oh, that's
Have you thought of this? Okay, let's go on to a geothermal update.
Again, I'd like to call on Mr. Entrican.
Hello again. Brief update on the geothermal. You might recall from last meeting, we nominated for geothermal leasing, roughly 70,000 acres. The land law examiner, who we submit that request to, got back to us and asked us to revise our nominations to avoid areas that BLM cannot lease, they can't do a geothermal lease. So that's where staff is right now, is going back and essentially taking the larger parcels that we had submitted and breaking them down into a more granular parcel allotment, and then we'll submit those back to BLM. So that's what we're working on now, if that makes sense. But Chris, did I miss anything?
No, that's the progress.
Okay.
So that's BLM land up there. I would have thought that'd be National Forest and under the Forest Service.
There's national wilderness areas, national rec areas. And then BLM oversees, they take in the nominations forms and then they consult with the folks who oversee those areas. Did that answer your question?
No, but that's okay. I'll talk to you offline.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Andrew.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, getting into strategic plan updates.
Okay, this is going to be a fun one. Let me start with a conversation that Commissioner Deshmani and I had. And he was suggesting putting together a straw man proposal for the process. And I thought that was a really good idea. And then because it's easier to react to something than not. And I also said I would put together one and I want to open this to you guys. So when we have our first workshop, I'll be ready to give you a straw man proposal of the process. It sounds like Commissioner Deshmani will be as well. You two may want to do that, or you may want to look at these things and pick and choose and slice and dice, but we'll have at least some place to start from. So just first thing, heads up, that's where that's coming from. So the second piece is scheduling. And our new clerk of the board, Mr. Shea, he had pinged all you guys, and we've tried to reconstruct that. He's out with a family emergency this week. Really, really unfortunate. I'm not going to share any details unless you want to talk afterwards. But the anyway, I'm going to call on Lisa to give us an update on the available dates, and then we can start talking about scheduling workshops and getting going on this.
Okay, so based on some of the feedback, which my understanding was after the last meeting, Commissioner Deshmani and Commissioner Legacy, you were fairly open in your schedules. And so what I looked at are for a couple of the dates are alternating Tuesday mornings when the Tuesdays that we're obviously not here for commission. And then one is actually on a Monday, and that had a little bit to do with Chris's schedule, and he's going to be out of town, and we didn't want to wait too long in between. So these are our proposed dates. October 15th. And then Monday, October 28th. And then Tuesday, November 19th. And the proposal at this point is for 3 hours of time. So 8 to 11 on each of those mornings.
Or we can do 8:15.
Yeah, we can do 8:15.
So
Sorry.
you're saying just one of the dates though, not, we're not.
No.
Oh, all three of these dates.
Well, and then if we don't need them, that's fine. We can cancel out. We're just trying to get the time blocked so that we can actually have some productive meetings and get rocking and rolling.
We didn't want them to be too far apart, and we didn't want to wait too much longer. And so we can communicate after and try to work those out. And I know I was kind of scrambling to find some of the emails with Joseph. I know I wasn't in on all of those. And I also, as Chris mentioned, I did not want to disturb him this week so that he could spend time with his family. So those are the dates that kind of initially, and we can look at that. We have some scheduling things that we'll move around as well to make that work. But if those dates don't work, we can look at something else. We're trying to just trying to keep kind of on track and keep a good flow, keep it going.
All
So
three work for me.
Yeah, I think I'm probably the one with the really packed calendar.
yes, I realize. Yeah. So we can talk
Yeah,
afterwards.
we'll talk
Yeah.
after.
Okay.
It's just afternoons for October are gonna be tough.
And then
Okay.
just, I want to observe, we've got time on our old business for strategic plan update. It's not much time, but we can expand that. So we can also carve out time during a regular meeting,
Yeah.
to supplement it. But the idea is that we want to get some focus time where we can start and do some real work on it, give you guys a chance to do some homework and then bring it back. And there'll be tons of iterations on this. And
Could we just attach a workshop meeting as an addendum to the regular meeting? Or would you
we
rather? do
could.
that as-
The issue there was just that, do you want to be here for 6 hours?
No.
Yeah.
Unable to be here for 6 hours, but I'll meet with Lisa
Okay.
afterwards and we'll talk. I've got some major things on some of these days.
Okay. Yeah. And we were also trying to avoid
Times.
Wednesday and Friday afternoon. Like
Yeah.
we were trying to look
Yeah.
at some other things that we
Yeah.
know were issues with your schedule. So we can definitely look at that, and then I can get back to everyone. But just I'll sort of take over that process for Joseph this week so that we can try to get that resolved and get it on the calendar.
And I'm really not wanting to be doing anything in the afternoons.
Right.
Yeah.
Can we also make sure we specifically invite the two individuals running for position number 1? Because, at the end of November, I'm not in this seat anymore. And so I know we're trying to hit the ground running, but I'd like them to be able to have their input regardless of the election.
And
We'll invite them.
Okay, thank you.
mine, of course, I'm running for my position.
I would like them to be there, but wouldn't it be strange to have unelected people weighing in on our strategic plan?
Well, they're public, so public can be there.
Yeah, these are all
And-
public meetings.
Yeah, but
and-
like weighing in, like helping to craft a strategic plan for an
Oh,
organization.
no.
Well, and I think one of the keys there is what process are we going to adopt? At what point, are we going to be having essentially deliberations among the team? And then, when do you want to bring staff in? When do you want to bring stakeholders in? How do you want to iterate that? And I think that a proposal of process would cover all that.
I don't necessarily expect them to be full on weighing in participants, but if you remember back to when there was that meeting at Bellingham Lakeway Inn,
Mhm.
I think there was some opportunity for the public to participate there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I envisioned.
Thank you.
we should make the topic of the workshops more controversial so we get better turnout.
There you go. I think we could do that. Okay.
If you like, I could get creative on that. And I'll make sure that our communications director approves my creativity. She'll prevent me from doing anything foolish. No, she won't. It'll be denied.
Okay, moving on to new business. Proposed letter of support for Whatcom County Council ordinance amending Whatcom County Code 20.82 public utilities to increase allowable power line voltage to 230 kilowatts or kilovolts, sorry, in zones currently limited to 115. That was a mouthful. Yes.
Indeed.
If it's okay with you, maybe we could also allow Brian to speak.
Yeah, sure.
Out of, if it's appropriate.
Yeah, if you would like to, but.
So this came out of a conversation that Commissioner Deshmani and I had, and it was his awareness that the county was going to try and change the code to allow the higher voltages that today are blocked by code. And so we had a quick conversation on that, I guess last week. Is it that recent, or maybe it's 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
And I think as a follow-up, Commissioner, I had some comments on that. Why limit it to 230, for instance? Why not go to 500? That's the highest allowable voltage, or the highest currently available voltage in Washington State. Not that we need it, just, why put a cap on it now and then 5 years later have to go back and put another cap on it? And Commissioner, you were going to follow up with somebody.
I did follow up, and Councilmember Galloway said that that certainly is something to explore. Our action doesn't prevent that being considered, but we're not taking action ourselves. We're just expressing support for upgrading infrastructure via this particular motion, not a formal resolution process, but and the comment back from Councilmember Galloway was that she would like some time to have that as part of the discussion, which they will be discussing later this afternoon, I believe.
Okay, and so where Commissioner Deshmani and I left it was pending the resolution of that one issue, because I think, from an engineering perspective, yeah, we ought to lift the cap.
Yeah.
And the 230 is a very reasonable intermediate step. It may, in fact, be the long-term answer in many regards. So what I'm offering to do is, on behalf of the PUD, writing a letter to the county council and sending it this morning, as soon as we get out of here, expressing our support for changing the cap from 115 to 230 kV. And, it's as simple as that. And just saying, we support this. We think it's going to help. It's going to, make development possible. It's going to make electrification easier, all of that. And I was just going to leave it at that, make it short and sweet. And, you guys, you're looking at it. Thank you for looking at it. And we think you ought to do it.
It sounds like a no-brainer, but what would be the downside to lifting the cap?
Well, I mean, the downside is if you oppose all development, this would enable exactly. And the other thing is that if, it's one of those things where the engineers can argue about this, but I think kind of the science is settled. If you convert all of our transportation and a lot of our built environment to electricity as a primary fuel, you're going to end up needing to upgrade the transmission and distribution systems, period. You're going to need to do that. We just don't have the capacity today. If you're limited to 115, you're going to have lots of new lines, and you're going to have to reconductor the old ones. So you're probably going to have to go outside right of ways. It's going to be, picket fence down roads, that kind of thing.
Yes, higher voltages.
Higher voltage is a good thing. And so from an engineering point of view, I think this is settled science that really going to a higher voltage is a better answer than not. Given that I think we're going to electrify a lot of transportation, and we're going to electrify a lot of the built environments in the next 40 years.
And probably cost saving too.
Well, certainly if you can use the same right of way and use the same structures, or, build structures in place, use the same conductor, or,
Right.
Yes, absolutely. There's cost savings that can be had. And at this point, I'd like to kick it over to Brian and see if you'd like to add anything to those comments.
Well, just briefly, I mean, I would echo again everything that you just said on that particular issue. And I can just add a couple of things. One is that in our service territory, 10 county service territory, Whatcom County is the only one with this type of prohibition on the books. So we're a little bit out of step when we think about our entire service territory. The other thing, I think this is important to just keep in mind, PSE has 4 generation facilities in Whatcom County. The ability to transfer that power is dependent upon this type of infrastructure, and your point's a good one around new rights of way or new infrastructure in that regard. Eliminating that cap allowed to use existing, in many cases, will allow us to use existing right of way and a lot of existing infrastructure. So I would agree with you. I think it's a little bit of a no-brainer. It's one of these issues that when it came to my attention, again, I'm relatively new in PSC, but this was something that was a little bit of a puzzle for folks, in other territories, like why does Whatcom County have this? So yeah, I agree.
Why does Whatcom County have this?
Yeah, so if you haven't seen the Whatcom County Council packet, I would encourage you to look at that. But it was a result of actually an initiative in 1990. There were folks who expressed a lot of concern with EMF exposure. The science today doesn't support that, but that was the genesis of it. And for those folks that were around Whatcom County in 1990, there was a lot of that sort of activism. And so that's the result. And I encourage folks to look at the resolution in the council packet on this, because there is some concern that initiative itself was illegal because it's an initiative that deals with land use issues. I believe that's not allowed. You have an opinion on that, but
No, but I did notice when you said those are around in 1990, I was the only one you looked at.
I too was around in 1990. So was Lisa.
That's all.
I was around, but not. Well,
Politically, these two weren't around politically.
So, and just a final kind of afterthought on, and this is really self-serving from the PUD's point of view. If we end up with a home run type installation up on Mount Baker for geothermal, we're going to need a higher voltage line to get the power out.
Which leads me to my question.
And some of that's going to be in Whatcom County.
Which leads to my question for both you, Chris, and to Brian. What are the voltages at your power stations in Whatcom County? And then the second part, what do you think about going from having 500 be the number instead of 230? I think, Chris, I did one question for you is what will be the voltages out of a geothermal facility? This is what I'm curious.
So let me start there. And it really depends on the size of the resource. If you're looking at 100 megawatts or so, and you want some kind of redundancy, you might be able to do that with a twin 115 circuit. If you get into the 500 megawatts, you're definitely into 230 and probably two 230 lines. If you get into the 500, get into 1,000 megawatt, which would be what I would consider a home run, you're probably looking at twin 500 circuits. So, the more power you want to transmit, the higher voltage you want to use. If you wanted to do 1,000 megawatts at 230 kV, you're probably looking at 4 or 5 circuits. And forget about redundancy. Let's just get the power out. So it's, higher voltages allow you to condense that down, and you end up with redundancy with 2 circuits. The other thing that I think that, and this goes back to kind of a technical perspective, when you look at 500 kV, you want to have higher ground clearance than you do with 230 or 115, and you have to have larger lateral clearance. And so you're looking at right of ways that are probably wider than what we have today.
Okay.
So even if you lift the cap from 115 to 500, and you could say, oh, sure, you could use the same right of way. Well, you can, but you'd need an extra 15 or 20 feet on both sides. And for sure, you'd be looking at taller structures. So, there's some technical considerations if you go with 500 kV that don't exist with 230, or that are not as profound with 230. There are some 230 kV or 115 kV right of ways that are too narrow for 230. So, there is that. You do have to consider that. And when you're at 230,000 volts, you've gone clearly across the bulk electric system bright lines. So those are NERC governed lines. So, you know, it's not just local authorities that have say about how they're built and operated, it's national authorities as well. And then just a quick rundown, all of the PUD's facilities are higher voltage at 115. We don't have anything else. Puget operates 55 kV, 115 kV, and 230 kV. Do you have 500? I don't think so.
I don't believe that we do. I have to double check that.
I think the 500 is all Bonneville and PowerX in Whatcom County.
Yeah, we don't have anything, I don't believe we have anything over 230 in Whatcom County.
Yeah, you might over in Eastern Washington, but I'm just not sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So basically the investor owns are 55, 115 and 230. We're 115 and Bonneville is 230 and 500 and 115.
I think you were asking generation capacity, so it varies amongst the 4 generation facilities, but I believe the lowest is 120 megawatts, and the largest is like 157 or 160.
Okay, so they're not that big, so
No, give you a range there. All that.
so they're probably all 115 or are they 230?
I believe everything right now is 115 owing to the prohibition, unless there was some
right.
230 transmission
Okay.
prior to 19.
And just for scale, Brian, that means like off peak, they can carry about 2/3 of Whatcom County or all of Whatcom County with internal generation. On peak, carry about half of Whatcom County with internal Whatcom County generation. And the rest of the power would have to come from somewhere else.
And those are all natural gas fired.
Correct.
You guys have one small hydro here in Whatcom County too.
No, that you're thinking maybe of the Baker facility, that's Skagit County.
That's bigger.
Okay.
Or Nooksack Falls.
Well, Nooksack Falls isn't,
That's
I mean, you're an off taker for that.
We are an
Yeah.
off-taker for that.
Is that still Archford?
Sorry,
Is that still Archford? That has it?
I believe it is, yeah.
Yeah, you referred me to him. I talked to him 2 summers ago. And he was in the process of rebuilding an old Pelton wheel, and I had a very entertaining conversation with him. And he wanted me to come up and help him. And I declined.
Interesting.
You're talking about the hydro facility up at Nooksack Falls?
Yeah.
Started.
So at this point, I would just look for approval from the 3 of you to author such a letter and send it today.
I'll move approval of action item 1, proposed letter of support for Whatcom County Council ordinance amending Whatcom County Code 20.82 to increase allowable power line voltage to 230 kV.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on
Thank you,
to
Commissioner.
action 2. Request a commission approval of broadband equity access and deployment technical assistance grants.
And for this, I would call on Mr. Entrican once again.
Hello again. Just want to say that I was a thought in 1990, even though I wasn't here until the early part of 1991. So if that counts. But I'm not here to talk to you about that. I'm here to talk to you about the Washington State Association of Counties technical grant that we applied for $50,000. Excuse me, $50,000. Like most of the applicants, that was the cap. What WASAC decided to do was spread the peanut butter, so to speak. So everyone got an equal amount of 37.5. So we're asking for your approval to accept the grant award.
And Andrew, this is for what body of work?
This is related to BEAD and preparing for BEAD applications. One of the primary things we want to do under the scope of work would be for these dollars would be utilized for preliminary or high level design engineering for the project areas once they get finalized, among other things.
So can we ask questions? Is this going to help us apply for the BEAD funding, or is this going to help us once we get the BEAD funding?
It helps us prepare for our application for the BEAD funding.
Yeah, I read the packet. Looks great. I don't have any questions. Move approval.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, commissioners. Last, we have on here a resolution that basically cancels a warrant that's been issued, and I think Annette is available to talk to this if you have any questions. It's in the packet.
Yeah.
Are there any questions about?
There, I don't have any
I don't
questions.
have
It's
any
just a
questions.
cancellation.
Yeah.
I guess I would just request that we take a look at our process in the future going forward and what, how much we have people utilizing their personal credit cards versus company, or PUD credit cards, and do we have a policy for that?
I believe we do. I don't know what it says offhand.
Okay.
Um,
That might be worth looking at and maybe prioritizing company use
Well,
or
so
PUD use.
yeah, and I've been in a lot of different organizations and it's gone back and forth. But where I fall down on this every time is that whenever you have a company credit card that's in use, wide use, I've seen mistakes. Some innocent, some not. You don't see those mistakes when somebody's obligated to use their own credit card and then turn in for expenses. And so there's a kind of a self-regulating aspect to that. You're outsourcing the risk to the individual, and typically the individuals pay more attention to that when they've got a little skin in the game. So that's the way I've seen it, and
I
that's the way I
absolutely
prefer it.
agree with that. And so I worry about equity when it comes to people using their own credit card. Just
And we still
ensuring that
have, we do have the company card. And for instance, when we send our new employees for training or anything like that, we do all that on the company card. So we do try and take care of that.
Great.
Move approval of resolution number 860.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, commissioner reports. I guess I'll just go down the line. I'm number one. It's been a month since I've seen you all. So I'll add some things from that time. So I was the moderator during the Puget Sound Partnership and YR1 meeting, and it was fantastic. I don't love being a moderator because I feel like I had to stop people from talking quite often, but we do that a lot here too. So
It's harder with people you don't know.
it is harder. I will say it was a really awesome meeting, and I enjoyed the panelist discussion. One of the things that was, I don't want to say surprising, but interesting to me is that Greg Eby was representing the Ag Water Board, and he was sort of the loudest voice in the room for conservation, which I think is interesting, and I think that we should lean into that.
And an incredibly effective speaker.
Yes, yeah. It was a wonderful event. I did go to the WAPUDA meetings, not the one on Wednesday. I wanted to throw out there, because I'm on the Government Relations and Communications Committee, I do get monthly updates when it comes to like the legislative session is coming up and we have priorities. I'm going to start sending that to you. We get like a grid.
I received that.
Okay.
I should receive it too.
Yeah, and then do you get it? Okay, or have you been getting that? Somebody needs to get it to Todd so that we're all on the same page.
Yeah, we should just ask them to add you to the list. They should just, I think they should send it to every
They
committee.
should, but
I
they
think
don't.
probably-
Yeah,
I
no,
think
they
probably do send it to you. You don't know
maybe.
what it is, and so it's.
In the email that I get, they send it just to government relations, and it's our job to put it out there to other people.
I'm still trying to learn and on the downhill slide here too. So,
Yeah, no,
it's drinking from the fire hose for sure.
Right. It just, so we have some legislative priorities, what PUDA does, and we just kind of keep tabs and updates on that. And that's, one other thing that came up, and I thought it was really interesting during the water committee, was a new legislative priority to tackle sort of how we handle freedom of information when it comes to protecting our energy and water.
Critical infrastructure.
Yeah. So that's going to be a a fight this year, I think, and I think it's worth it. Because I would hate for us to be giving out information on our critical infrastructure.
Yeah, I do actually. So I saw that presentation. I think Atul and I were both there. And it's interesting that there's conflicting interpretations of the current existing law. And I hope that a attorney general opinion can come out and actually solve that at the lowest level. So I think that'd be the easiest fix, is to say how that law that some people are saying does apply to an exemption would continue to apply or should apply, instead of having to draft new legislation. That's always more difficult.
Just so you know, an AG opinion is just persuasive and they're not binding on the courts. So it still leaves room for litigation. That's why they're probably leaning towards a legislative fix.
Always a lawyer making it more difficult.
It's a beautiful system.
How's he supposed to earn a living? Okay, that's it for me. Thank you. We'll go to Todd next.
Thanks, Commissioner Arnett. I'm not going to comment on, I brought forward the PUD report at the last meeting. Unfortunately, you weren't here for that. What I'm going to talk about is Water Week that I went to over in Spokane. And basically it kicked off with John and Chris giving a great presentation about the adjudication. There were a few questions in the room, and I think a lot of people had the question of when is this going to impact me that maybe they weren't asking. A couple of the big things that I got out of Water Week was the presentation by the Columbia River office and Representative Gaynor from the Leavenworth and Dryden area, talking about the Icicle Creek Water Group. And I think that our WIRA 1 caucus should take a hard look at the Icicle Creek Water Group and the successes and the problems that they've had there, because it was reported as a pretty decent success of working through the issues there. And I think that possibly we could learn something, because they do have a dam in a wilderness area up there, and they've managed to work through some really interesting things. So I think that would be a great learning opportunity for our WIRA 1, especially as we move through trying to address some of the wet water problems instead of just looking at the paper water. One of the things I noticed, and this goes to your government relations point, is that a lot of PUDs talk about local control, but in politics, framing matters. And I think that our organization should frame that more as local advocacy than local control, especially as we have a new crop of legislators that are going to be coming into the positions down there in Olympia. As we talk about local advocacy for our consumers, customers, and constituents, it's more true and it's more well received, I think, on both sides of any aisle. So I would just encourage that. I'm, not going to be here that much longer. So as you talk with more people in our organizations of WAPUDA, I hope you'll convince them to try to reframe that a little bit into local advocacy, because I think it has a much truer ring. It was interesting to hear, was it Dave Christensen from Ecology mentioned that there's actually an 18-year wait list for any new water rights application in the state from DOE. That's a really sobering figure. Now, that isn't permit exempt wells, but 18 years. That was a really interesting figure. And then the other thing that kind of came up in multiple points was the Growth Management Act and how water is really and should be a focus in the GMA planning process. And one of the things I think we as a PUD can really be an advocate for, even though it isn't quite in our wheelhouse. It's that public advocacy point that I believe all elected people have, is talking about how affordable housing weighs into either existing water or new water needs. Because you can't have affordable housing if you're not having affordable water or even any water. Thanks. I don't have any new I don't have any new upcoming per diems. I've got it approved. I'm going to the Power Forum at Energy Northwest on the 24th.
Thank you. So I wanted to really appreciate the comment you made about local control. And that's not as appealing, right? Local advocacy is more appealing, and so I'll try to adopt that at subsequent Buddha meetings. Good language, and perhaps even local solutions and local advocacy. And that might resonate well, or better in Olympia. That we're both advocating for the public, but also providing solutions for the public. And if you try to hardwire from Olympia, that gives us less ability to come up with creative solutions. So I think Liz will be all over that. So have you built a relation, Lisa, with Liz yet?
I have met Liz, yeah.
Yeah.
Words matter.
Words matter. So I don't know, you just brought it up, but when we're in strategic plan, can somebody remember to bring that language up? Okay, great, because that's good, really good language. I wasn't able to, Jamie, attend the whole Puget Sound Partnership meeting, but I could tell stuff got real, and then it was wonderful. And I know that having previously been at the Watershed Management Board and really supporting the comments you made some months ago about, what's this up, why is it not working? That was the day where everything was actually really working.
It was, yeah.
And you played a really constructive role in that. So thank you for that. And I guess my question to you is, being immersed in that, are things coming up as far as what we need to do differently at the Watershed Management Board? And whenever you need to answer that now, but I really want to support kind of this next step of how do we make more of what happened that day happen more frequently in our community.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can just say, with some urging from Eric Hurst as well, and I've been reaching out to Becky and Chris, trying to just get more information on, like, why is the process, so slow? I think my frustrations, and Eric's as well, is that it seems like, we only have one meeting every other month, and last year half of them were canceled, and we're dealing with a very old strategic plan, and also just kind of hold space for the fact that it's really difficult to get the board members together at times. We're all busy people and it's not our full-time jobs, and anyway, and I think the new strategic plan should be out soon, like any
before the end of the year.
Before
Yeah,
the
so
end of
it's
the
the
year.
next 3 months.
Yeah.
That's Becky's next priority.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, I think it's one of those things you just have to keep showing up, why everyone meetings are public, even though you're not on the board, you can show up and keep asking the questions. I do find that everybody is very responsive when you do, keep asking the questions. And speaking of that, I've had some really good conversations with Eric recently in regard to that.
Okay. One thing that's both of you mentioned that I want to just bring up, it's not really within the direct scope of PUD, but it's to me kind of an elephant in the room. And that's this nexus between land use and water use, and private wells and development and all that kind of thing. And Whatcom PUD is not going to solve this issue. Even if we stopped and did nothing but work on this issue, we probably couldn't solve this issue. It's a existential kind of struggle. And I just, we can't be ignored either. It affects us indirect and we, but I just, I mean, it's just interesting.
When
We came
we-
up with
yeah.
a sound partnership.
Yeah, well, and when we had opened up for public comment, but also the board was weighing in on the direction for the strategic plan for YRO1. I believe it was the tribes that brought up, they'd like to see more conversations about land use in the new strategic plan. And so, yeah, it's closely tied, right? Whoever controls the water controls the land, so we will be having more, probably some tense and upsetting conversations about that in the future. Yeah.
Okay, so,
I just want to remind the commission that one of the purposes of getting the legislation through last year that changed the timelines for the adjudication was to allow a period of time up front for the group to get together outside of the YRO1, just as part of the adjudication, and talk about wet water solutions that can get us to a paper water solution. So, you know, when you talk about the tail wagging the dog, you know, that's the last thing. I mean, if you'd asked me 5 years ago if I knew about all this stuff, you know, could the PUD actually get something like that across the finish line? I would have said, hell no. They're a bit player in this whole thing. And yet, John, thank you. You know, it just, so it's not like we've done nothing. It's not like we're doing nothing.
Sure, yeah.
It's, you know, on the other hand, we are a bit player in some regards, and we have to bring all of these people together that have very different interests and outlooks, and especially YRO1,
Yeah.
it's by consensus. So you get one party that says, no, thanks, you know, it's dead. And that, so you've really got to be thoughtful and methodical about how you bring things forward. And even doing that, it's very difficult to get things done.
Well, being a big player also gives the opportunity to be the facilitator.
Absolutely.
And you can articulate the logical link between water and land use and affecting the PUD when it comes to Todd's comment about housing and the exempt well. It's candidly the exempt well and building in the rural environment for single family homes has been an affordable housing solution for many, when the housing probably should have been concentrated in the city. And by having it in the city, you can have more efficient water distribution, water appropriation, and less water use as a result. And that does.
And conservation.
And more.
It's required by law.
And so that leads to our interest in protecting resources and having it available for our water right by reducing and limiting exempt wells.
And you also get less conversion of farmland, which is good for food.
So I have one, and I know we have procedure. And you know, I often make non-standard requests. So one of our customers who was requested as a meeting on Thursday, and I think our staff is able to attend, right, that for an update on Plant 1. Tyler from PCT6.
So yeah, we've got it on the calendar right now.
Okay. So and I can see Tyler's on our commission meeting, because we didn't really discuss Plant 1 today. But I think that some of the meetings that we discussed at PCC6 was not in attendance, so kind of a catching up kind of meeting. I would like to attend that. And per diem it's not essential, but if the commission thinks it's fine, then I will do so.
What we plan on sharing, what we plan on sharing with them is exactly what we shared with you guys, and you said, yes, this is a good strategy for going forward. So it's not going to be anything new to you, and it will be something that all three of you have approved.
Yeah.
So I don't. That sounds like a staff function to me. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's leave it that way then. I'll let you guys handle the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And if you know, if we might have follow-ups, if I'll follow up then. I have no non-standard. I didn't submit any for the next 2 weeks, and so I don't have anything else as far as that goes. I just wanted to ring the bell about legislative session and ask our staff to if there's anything that we think is pertinent or relevant, on our three fronts of water, broadband, or energy that we would seek either modification of or legislative action, if there's anything like that on our agenda. Anything?
Yeah, so we've kind of been through the litany of the stuff. So on the geothermal, we don't think this cycle, there's
Yeah.
anything for us. On the broadband, likewise, the only thing that's on there is we need a legislative allocation of the remaining $200 million of the $250 million to withhold for the public matching for the BEAD. And that is on WAPUDA's agenda. That is part of their legislative agenda. And in terms of water, we're working with the WUC very closely on their response to municipal water law and water law 2030, policy 2030 that ecology is coming out with. I think that what ecology is going to ultimately land on is something that we really are not in favor of. And it may require either a judicial or a legislative fix. I think that as an agency, they're kind of coloring way outside the lines. And I think that's both WAPUDA and WUC's opinion. I don't know if WAPUDA is advocating any legislative fix this session. It really depends on when ecology finishes their work on municipal water law and kind of issues their record of decision. And I don't know of anything on energy other than we've.
Well, the only suggestion I might throw out there is, ecology has done the programmatic EISs on utility scale, solar, wind farm. And they resisted including an alternative in those programmatic EISs for geothermal. You might go back to ecology and ask for ecology funding for another round of a programmatic EIS for utility scale geothermal projects. That would, at least if you got the leases, you'd be ahead on the EIS review on a programmatic basis. So it might buy a year or so timing.
So one thing, John, this wouldn't have a state EIS on it because it's on federal land.
No, I know that, but if they did it, feds could then adopt it and incorporate it and streamline the process.
Now, I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I would support that kind of initiative. And I think Chelan kind of at the last WAPUDA meeting came out pretty pro geothermal.
Yeah, they've actually got some hotspots inside their county. And then south of there, there's a whole bunch of hotspots. So we think that there'll be a number of PUDs ultimately to get involved in geothermal.
And everything is related. And I think that anything we do to lubricate new sources will benefit all new sources. So I'd like you all to consider that. And I don't know, we haven't heard from the other commissioners on this subject, but I'd like, my perspective is I'd like you to consider them. Go ahead.
Well, at the last WAPUDA meeting, they did talk about basically being on defense this year with the legislative, especially regards to funding, with the budget projections being what they are. So I think we should be prepared for just trying to maintain what we have in some regards, not trying to swing for the fences, but single base hits are great if we can even get those, right?
But this is one where you do have Chelan or Douglas or other PUDs in favor. It's not a big.
It's a very small ask.
Sure.
And it's probably something Shoemake and Timmons could get behind quickly. So I would say the conversations with them, and then they could reach across the state to get their Chelan County counterparts and start sponsoring some part of the legislation.
If you guys want, I'll reach out to Travis down at WAPUDA today. And we've talked already, and I gave him our geothermal presentation. He had no idea what geothermal energy was all about. So he really liked the presentation because it's a good primer on the whole thing.
Yeah, why don't we let Travis and Liz take the temperature on this and see if it's something that we can go with.
Yeah, and then perhaps Representative Rammel also might be a really strong
for sure. Yeah, I don't think we'll get any opposition from anybody at the 42nd.
Yeah, well, opposition, we need somebody to push it. We need a supporter.
Advocate and then go walk down the hall and generate support.
I did have a question. You brought up policy 2030
Yeah.
and I guess that's a reimagining of the municipal water law under ecology kind of.
There's the municipal water law and
Yeah.
then there's the regulations on how to implement it. And policy 2030 is the regulations around how to implement municipal.
So my question is more directed to John, but recently the Supreme Court had a decision related to the Chevron defense that came out with EPA's lesser ability to, I guess, regulate without legislation.
By ecology?
Is there potential for that? Is that only at the federal level? Okay.
That's going to be a federal regulation role of presidency and executive action. It's only.
It's not going to drip down. Yeah.
No, it is only.
Yeah.
If some justice wanted to write an opinion that said, well, here's what happened to the federal government, we're going to apply that. There are constitutional principles with the governor's office here. So it's not directly.
Okay. Thank you. That was my question.
Anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say as far as legislative priorities though, and I think I in the water committee meeting had heard you mention how it's kind of a bummer that we're not pushing the foster fix more. So foster fix did make Waputa's legislative priorities and they have sort of two plans of attack for that. One is just working cooperatively with allied organizations to talk to key legislators, but one is also to engage in ecology's development of groundwater modeling guidance. So Waputa will be tackling some of that this legislative session.
I think ecology is going to tie itself to groundwater modeling as the basis for proceeding with the phosphorus fix, and it's going to be slow.
Yeah.
It is when you harken back to what the tribes and fisheries said on our California Creek project, it's actually an allegation proper. And their responses, it's going to be difficult to get to. It is going to be difficult to get to foster fixes, which is allowing mitigation or out of basin transfer for mitigation or offsetting water appropriation without having some extensive groundwater modeling. It's unfortunate because the groundwater fix, the foster fix is going to be essential to any kind of resolutions and solution to the Nooksack Basin on the adjudication. And so if the positions of the parties and ecology are we have to go through some extensive groundwater modeling and understanding the effect of fish, et cetera, et cetera. It'll be 2060.
Mm-hmm. Now, I will say Whatcom County, I think, is ahead of most other counties.
It is.
Because we have a good I shouldn't say good. We have a groundwater model that appears to work. And now, have we tested it by, dropping dye in at a location and seeing when it times out into the river? No. But that kind of thing is the next step. So, and if you do that and it doesn't agree with the model, you use the new data to calibrate the model. That's exactly how you fix that. So I think that I absolutely agree with all of John's comments. I'm not sure I agree with the timeline with regards to YR1. It might actually be quicker because of all the pre-work we've done, but quicker might be 2040 instead of 2060. I mean,
But
it's not tomorrow.
it's the question is, will ecology pass some regulatory change or support a regulatory change, and can that overcome challenge statewide, or do they do a basin specific fix? And it's hard to imagine why ecology as a statewide agency would say we'll have a one-off fix on science.
Except they've already done that in a couple of other basins.
They have done that.
No.
I'm
that's
foreseeing
our
the challenges. I understand the hope, and I'm being the negative Nelly, the paranoid, but
Negative no. That's your job.
sometimes.
He keeps me restrained. Otherwise, I'd just be spouting hope at the end of the table.
Joy and hope.
Yeah.
All right, and moving on to the last public comment period. Anyone in the audience have comments? Not you? Not today? All right.
Yeah, just quickly, just a note of thanks for your action on the letter. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if there is no more public comment, we will close the public meeting. We do have an executive session for about 20 minutes. should we come back at 10:25?
Yeah, I think a
Yeah,
quick break.
Take a little break, come back at 10:25. Executive session should take 20 minutes, so 10:45.
20 minutes.
Yep.
Well, we made one 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's go 10 minutes, we can extend.
Okay,
Yeah.
so 10:35.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
In my figs and those, I'm getting like 20 calcium today.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're good. They are required taste though. I agree with Todd. That's why I do generally.
See, I love them. You love them too.
I wonder, if
Her family
that- I
will eat
wonder,
them.
I wonder how they are dehydrated. Do you have them dehydrated?
I do.
No, but she can be.
You might want to consider that.
He's like, I get all of them.
Are we
All
back
of
in
them.
session?
We set 5,
They might be good.
someone was watching.
May as well try it, right?
And what I'm saying is in terms of people eating something, that's fruit, that's unusual. If you dehydrate it, then all of a sudden it looks like a raisin.
It might get a little, if I
They get sweet, things get sweeter too. Or
Mhm.
it gets sweeter when you dehydrate them. It might take
My
the,
husband will eat
the
it
bite
because of
off.
the texture. He also doesn't grade or very.
Does he like raisins?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking dehydrating might be the way.
Okay. You can dehydrate, I can bring it back.
Or pie.
I'll give it a shot. If I don't eat them all first,
I
is
have
the
several
problem.
recommendations for pie, put them with like rhubarb or something.
You can open up.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll disappear in rhubarb, or they'll disappear in strawberry too.
We are back from executive session. No action was taken. It's 10:43.
Public Power Week.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to make the announcement?
Well, just, I remember seeing in an email that it's Public Power Week and yeah, so I'm glad that we are, a purveyor of public power in Whatcom County, or I guess the purveyor of public power.
No,
Well, no,
one of three.
Blaine and
Oh,
Stevens.
that's, thank you. Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
take away my blame.
okay.
So hooray, Public Power Week.
Hooray, Blaine, hooray.
Sumas.
Sumas, hooray, Whatcom PUD.
All right.
All right.
So 10:44, this meeting is adjourned. Someday look at me again.
Todd, you have a couple